Welcome back to online classes. Dear students, I am James here. How are you? Today I am going to discuss with legal research methodology subjects. Okay, under the topic hypothesis. 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 What is that hypothesis? Here, meaning of hypothesis. Okay. Hypo means less than or under. Hypo means less than or under. And thesis, thesis, thesis means idea or general opinion to be defended by a person, and thus hypothesis means an idea formed beforehand which has less value than the generally formed view. Generally formed view. Okay, so if we have to proceed towards some destination for which we don't know the way, we try to form an idea about the direction to proceed, and by trial and error we reach that goal. The primary idea is called a hypothesis. As per the George A. Lundberg explained, a hypothesis is a tentative generalization, the validity of which remains to be tested. In its most elementary stage, the hypothesis may be any hunch, guess, imaginative idea which becomes the basis for action or investigation. Okay, and the scientific hypotheses are empirical testable statement. This word is said by Cohen, 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 and Nagel, Nagel, Nagel. The scientific hypotheses are empirical testable statements deduced from a theory. They present the relationship between the variables in a testable form. For example, poverty is a cause of crime. Okay, if any one of the person coming from below poverty, what happened? He will do the crime. Okay, he only doing all the crime and all, because we are searching many other criminal area. Those who are coming from poverty line, that particular person only doing all the offense and all. Okay, because of his mens rea and his circumstances, these are all instigate to do crime. Okay, so, and another thing, hypothesis provides direction to research. It directs an investigator to identify the procedures and methods to be following in solving the problem. The hypothesis is forward looking. It may be a statement of relationship, or it may specify the functions. For any problem, framing the hypothesis requires prior knowledge of the phenomena. We can frame master hypothesis and subsidiary hypothesis. Okay, here what are the characteristics or qualities of useful or workable hypothesis? Okay, hypothesis express a relationship between two or more variables. To formulate a hypothesis, different variable related to the problem should be identified. The variables can be measured. Okay, this is the main thing, measured. The variables are expressed as independent or causative variable, dependent or effective variable, and intervening variable. Okay, these relationship between variables are expressed in the form of cause-effect relationship. The relationship can be positive, negative, full or partial. Hypothesis is an explanation that needs to be established before it can be examined. If a good hypothesis is one which is testable and must be based directly on existing data. It might even be expected to predict or anticipate previously unknown data. According to Galtung, 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 there are 10 dimensions of useful hypothesis. What is that? Number 1 is generality. Number 2 is complexity. Number 3 is specificity. Number 4 is determinancy. Number 5 is falsifiability. Number 6 is testability. Number 7 is communicability. 8 is reproducibility. Number 9 is predictability. And last one, tenability. Okay. So, and Goat and had to suggest the following characteristic of useful hypothesis. What is that one? Number 1, specific. Number 2, conceptually clear. Number 3 related to available techniques. Number 4, related to body of theory. Number 5, capable of empirical test. Number 6, simple. I'll give you 2 or 3 one. The hypothesis should not be too vague or general. There is general tendency to select hypotheses that are too vague. This is called specific. Okay, and capable of empirical test means the hypothesis should be such as can be put to empirical test. Empirical test is the basis of objectivity, which is so essential for any scientific method. Okay. And sources of hypothesis. What are the sources of hypothesis? The Goode, Goode, Goode and Haidt have given the sources of hypothesis. Number 1, scientific theory, analgesis, okay, analgesis or analgesis. Number 3, personal experience. What is the scientific theory? The theory gives us the basic idea of what has been found to be correct, and the knowledge of theory leads us to form further generalization, and this generalization form the part of hypothesis. What is analgesis? Sometimes a hypothesis is formed from the analogy. A similarity between the phenomena is observed and hypothesis is formed to test whether the two phenomena are similar in any other respect. The last one, personal experience, means hypothesis is formulated according to the way in which an individual reacts to culture, science and analogy. The facts will be true, but hypothesis may be formulated when a rightful individual sees it is in rightful perspective. And another one, problems in formulating the hypothesis. What are the problems while you're formulating the hypothesis? The main difficulty is to formulate the hypothesis according to Goode and Haidt. Number 1, absence of clear theoretical framework. And number 2, lack of ability to utilize the theoretical framework logically. Number 3, failure to be acquainted with available research techniques so as to be able to praise the hypothesis, okay, properly. And another subheading of this hypothesis, stages in formulation of hypothesis. What are the stages in hypothesis? Number 1, the researcher has first to observe the phenomena. Okay, without observing, what happened? Nothing. And he should identify the reflection, that is cause and the consequence of the phenomena. And third, he should logically deduct the fact relating the phenomena. And the last one, he should keep it ready for verification with empirical situation. Okay. And what are the types of hypothesis? The kinds of hypothesis can be explained in many ways, taking the base on which they are classified. One type of hypothesis asserts that something is the case in given instance that a particular object, person or situation has a particular characteristics. And another type deals with the frequency of occurrence or of association among variables. Yet another type of hypothesis asserts that a particular characteristic is one of the factors which determine another characteristics, and this is known as causal hypothesis. Okay, and there are hypotheses stating relationship, some specific functions, and thirdly null hypothesis, which study the non-existence of the relationship between variables. And hypothesis can be divided into two broad categories. Number one is experimental, number two is non-experimental. Okay, the experimental hypothesis can again subdivided into number one is essential, number two statistical hypothesis, number three statistical hypothesis may be further categorized null hypothesis, and constructive experimental hypothesis. The constructive hypothesis can be negative or positive. Non-experimental hypothesis are of three forms. Number one simple level, number two complex level, number three functional level hypothesis. Okay, here what is that above types of hypothesis, experimental and non-experimental. Okay, we'll discuss on later video classes each by each. I'm giving outline of hypothesis, then we'll discuss with one by one clearly. Okay, and hypothesis concerning collection. What is that? Collections refers to an arrangement of circumstance. When a hypothesis is made relating to the circumstance necessary to produce a phenomena is known as hypothesis regarding collections. Okay, and Mr. P.V. Young has divided the hypothesis into three broad categories. Number one uniform, number two complex, number three analytical. What is that uniform? The uniform hypothesis relate to the existence of empirical uniformities. They are common sense propositions and merely show regulations or regularities. Complex means the complex types are concerned with complex ideal type. They outline the essence of logically desired relationship between empirical uniformities. Analytical means the analytical hypothesis deal with the relationship of analytical variables. They are aimed at finding out the relationship between changes in one property leading to changes in another. Okay, and what are the null hypotheses? The hypothesis may be classified as hypothesis stating relationship and hypothesis which study the existence no relationship between variables, or null hypothesis. The null hypothesis may be crude or refined. When a null hypothesis stated negatively, so it is called a null hypothesis. What are the advantages of null hypothesis? It is exact and it is easier to disprove the contrary of any hypothesis than to prove it with complete certainty. Null hypothesis enable the researcher to eliminate some of the alternative hypotheses. What are the disadvantages of the null hypothesis? Number one, in null hypothesis, the researcher has to prove that all the possible identified alternatives one by one have probable relationship. And number two, it is suitable to certain types of problems only. Number three, it requires great skill of the researcher. Okay, and another point of hypothesis, what are the important or significance of hypothesis. Here the hypothesis gives a point to inquiry. It makes the inquiry more specific and to the point. In the absence of hypothesis, the researcher is like a sailor on the wide sea without compass or rudder. Okay, and hypothesis helps in deciding the direction in which to proceed. It is the starting point of the research. Okay, and it raises the standard of result, and also it helps to economize the collection data. Okay. Okay, student. And another point of view of formulate hypothesis, ideally formulate hypothesis for research means, oral Akoff discussed the problem of formulation of hypothesis in detail. Here a researcher should start with trying to determine all alternative means, that means solution or explanation of coming to grip with this problem. For this he has to undertake a resource survey which may bring to light what alternative means, solutions or explanation may be applied to the problem, and he has to attempt to determine which of the alternative course of action or solution and explanation is most efficient in terms of certain criteria. Okay, the formulation of alternative hypothesis involves the following steps. Number one, a measure of efficiency applicable to all the alternative course of action is selected. Number three, on the basis of the selected measure of efficiency, a set of acceptance conditions for each alternative course of action is assigned. And third, the acceptance conditions are reformulated as hypotheses which are mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive. Okay, and testing the hypothesis, and another subheading, testing the hypothesis. What is that? Testing the hypothesis. We cannot admit anything as valid knowledge until a satisfactory test of the validity has been completed. It is a mistake to consider hypotheses as facts, no matter how talentedly and systematically they have been arrived at. Indeed, very exact proof and measurement are demanded, often by two or more persons or by ratist. Okay, students, that's all. This is hypothesis and all. If you want to give more anything about in this area, going on. Okay, students, we'll meet you again next class. We'll discuss a fresh subtitle of this research paper. You just imagine what we discussed in this video classes. Go through and watch 2 or 3 times, then it is easy to understand. Okay, and refer your textbook also. Then research mind also coming in your mind. Now it's clear. Okay, student, all the best. Take care. Bye.